Welcome to episode 305 of the Postal Hub podcast. I'm Ian Kerr. Joining me in this episode is Markus Reckling. He's the CEO Germany at DHL Express. We're going to talk about cross-border e-commerce, B2B and B2C, as well as delivery preferences for cross-border e-commerce, and a little bit about sustainability, in particular what Deutsche Post DHL is doing in Germany when it comes to sustainability. So, coming up in a moment, Markus Reckling from DHL Express. Joining me on the line is Markus Reckling. He's the CEO Germany for DHL Express. Markus, welcome. We're going to get stuck into a couple of really important topics for the delivery sector. E-commerce, it's a very broad topic, isn't it? And sustainability. Let's start with e-commerce. Just before we hit record, we were talking a little bit about B2B e-commerce and B2C e-commerce, and so some of the different trends that you're seeing there in those segments. Can you just share a few observations, please, Markus?
Well, first of all, Ian, welcome from my side as well, and thanks for having me on your show. It's my great pleasure, and indeed two very, very exciting topics. So e-commerce, of course, it has been a big driver in our business for the last few years, even before the pandemic. Of course, the pandemic changed a lot, but we can see things evolving, and mainly in the past years, we've been talking about B2C e-commerce. And this is, of course, still the big animal in the park. But there is this small tiger coming up called B2B e-commerce. The people are starting to use the same behaviors they see within the B2C environment, also in the B2B environment. Online transactions in the B2B environment are gaining a totally new speed. Maybe Europe is not the leading region on that one. There's probably Asia and other regions which are further ahead of that. But we clearly see a big trend also in B2B transactions getting smaller, getting more international, and getting more of that e-commerce type of a flavor. And I think, the procurement world dramatically changes. We actually have even a sales program called Sell Like Never Before that exactly focuses on that, because I think also that means sales needs to reinvent themselves, because, information providing and stuff like that is simply not good enough anymore for a salesperson, because that all can be done online, and a lot of people use these tools. And so we do see a lot more B2B transactions in the online environment, still at a much smaller scale, but we see them. And the good thing is, whilst, of course, especially this year, B2C e-commerce is struggling. Well, relatively speaking, we're coming out of 2 years of pandemic, and there is a bit of, and I think we see two things driving the B2C space. The one is a general hesitation to do consumption in the consumers, and the second is a rebalancing between brick and mortar and the online world. And so just in Germany, for example, in the first quarter, B2C e-commerce versus the first quarter of 22, which is, of course, one of the peak ones, is down minus 15% overall. The services segment is a bit better, but for example, one of the big players, fashion and shoes, leading the pack on the downward trend. The only segment that I see working there well is the luxury segment, because I guess there the whole inflation topic doesn't kick in so much, and there the factor is now where we're allowed to meet again. There is more occasions to wear your Louboutins and your Dior stuff. So these are positive, but the rest is negative. And the only positive segment in the B2C arena other than that is food, but which I think is a positive sign, because because food is a very stable segment, and if there is more online, it means that some of these shifts between offline and online will be sustainable and will sustain, because because in the food you have the least of this economic ups and downs. So there you can see the trends the best. And the B2B world we see clearly growing, not in double digits like maybe we were used to it over the last few years, driven by B2C, but we see a solid, steady single-digit growth in the B2B arena, which I also think is a good sign and gives me hope that we will see a big recovery in the second half of the year. But who knows that? But so that's why we're heavily investing in B2B e-commerce as well, and trying to also kind of consult our customers how they can change their processes. We know how they can open up different markets, and especially I think we are strong believers in the opportunity of global markets, and we believe that this B2B or e-commerce trend will especially give huge opportunities to mid-sized companies, because they can suddenly access supply markets which normally only large companies could have accessed and via the B2B e-commerce. And I think that's the same for us in the B2B and in the B2C arena. The thing that excites us is less the domestic e-commerce, it is the international e-commerce.
It's really interesting to talk about B2B because it's something that has been in the background, that the move to B2B e-commerce away from, say, an old-fashioned catalog-driven procurement model, let's say. And when you see players like Amazon, let's admit it, Amazon moving into B2B, that sends the message that disruption is on the way, and that we in the delivery sector and the B2B sector need to be alert to, I think, to what you described as, being alert to consumer preferences, whether they're a small business or a medium-sized business or whatever. You mentioned cross-border, though. Does cross-border apply for B2B the same way that applies for B2C, do you think?
I think cross-border is even going to be more important in the B2B space than it is in the B2C. I mean, for us, it heavily applies in the B2C arena as well, because that's basically our business. If I look at some of my customers, like from the luxury fashion industry, they provide from one central warehouse, maybe in Germany, they provide a superior customer experience on the delivery side to their customers all around the world, that even a customer in Australia that orders something has it within 3 days and has a huge advantage, especially in the luxury segment, of having stocks only in one location, because stocks are limited in that segment. And by that way, you can really create a good customer experience all around the world. But, I think, as I said before, in the B2B arena, this is even more important because it opens up new supply markets, especially for the smaller and medium-sized market. A Siemens or an MTU or somebody, of course, they've been sourcing globally all their life, but, especially these hidden German champions and stuff like that, these smaller companies, for them, it's a lot more complex to have procurement offices all around the world, to have the relationships. And there is, I think, where the huge opportunity in B2B e-commerce sits. And of course, B2B e-commerce allows for smaller lot sizes. So, also, the risk behind the procurement option is a different one. But of course, business has to do a lot with trust. So I think on the B2B e-commerce, even more than on the B2C e-commerce, it is important to build these trusted platforms, to build solid, stable performance. And that's where I think we can kick in by really, with our services, making sure that the international experience is very similar to the local experience, because that is the piece that will build the trust.
Now, you just mentioned there the international experience and the domestic experience. And let's talk about that when it comes to consumer delivery preferences. When you're selling cross-border, this can be a difficult bridge to cross, understanding those delivery preferences in destination countries. Can you share some comments on that, please?
Yes, and that's why we believe to be undogmatic. So, we believe to give the consumer choice. And that's why we have something called on-demand delivery. And the system works in more than 100 countries around the globe, and where basically the consumer with his iPhone or with his smartphone can create whatever experience she or he wants on the delivery. Do I want it in my office? Do I want it at home? Do I want it in a locker? Do I want it at a certain date? A lot of players can do that, but they can only do it in certain markets. And I think for this international e-commerce, it is so crucial to create the same customer experience in all the markets you are active, because that's what drive your brand, what drive the trust behind your brand. And there you need global solutions that are not dogmatic, but that allow whatever it needs. If you're going to Dubai, people expect to get the stuff sent in a locker. They don't expect a delivery at home. If you're in Germany, the leading option is still, I want it at my door at home, and every market has different options. And what we do is we open up the fields and allow each consumer to get the experience he or she wants. And if a German wants it in the locker, he also gets it in the locker, but we allow for all the options and give that flexibility and give the B2B player or the B2B player a chance to create that experience, whatever is needed in that country. And of course, since we're an express service, at the same time, also in a comparable speed to a domestic player.
Can you share a bit about the some of the different delivery preferences that you've seen? You mentioned Germany a bit there, but what are some of the delivery preferences, or even some of the returns preferences that you've seen in different markets?
Well, I think, unfortunately, returns are a big topic in every market if you talk to the e-commerce players. So, and maybe the Anglo-Saxons markets are the ones with the highest return rates, and the more mature a market get, unfortunately, the higher the return quotas get. But still, on the delivery options, in some markets, it's more the home deliveries. In some markets, it's office deliveries. In some markets, it's lockers. Some markets, for example, like Dubai, they don't do hardly any home delivery. It's all into some kind of lockers and things like that. But, we believe, let's give the receiver the choice. And that's why we have a system called on-demand delivery, which many players have, but most players have it in a few big markets. We have it in over 100 markets. So we can create the same customer experience in over 100 markets. And I think that, to me, is, if I'm an e-commerce player, is crucial, that I really have control over this last mile experience all everywhere where I'm playing. In addition to that, there's going to be a yellow and red guy delivering this in every single market, not some kind of a guy who I've never heard of or something else before. And we give the consumer the choice. If he wants it at home, if he wants it in the office, if he wants it in the morning, if he wants it in the afternoon, and that in more than 100 markets. And I think this, if you want to play international, is the crucial thing, to have it wherever your consumers are, and not just some selected market. The second big thing we're seeing rising dramatically, and by the way, before that, maybe, the other big advantage if you go international, that's a bit bigger as a trend in the B2C than in the B2B arena, but holds still true for both. Shopping baskets increase when you go international, and on the B2C arena, returns is a big topic, and the return quotas go down when you go international, because, you do less impulse shopping, I think, on your international shopping, and you do more planned shopping. And, when you shop international, you tend to then think, okay, but, if I get a parcel from the US, I better put a few more things in. And that's why, two of the big headaches that B2C players have, size of the shopping baskets and return quotas, those two things favorably change in the international segment. What holds people back usually is, you need distribution centers all around the world and things like that, big investments, big complexity. But we believe, even with one distribution center somewhere in the world, you can create a really, really good customer experience if you use express services.
Let's move on to the topic of sustainability. And sustainability has been a really big part of the Deutsche Post DHL Group strategy for the last, I don't know how many years now, with the various projects that we've seen coming out of Deutsche Post DHL, and some really, let's be honest, what seemed like very aggressive targets when they were first announced. Now, can you just give us an update on what's been happening, in particular in Germany, with regard to sustainability efforts, whether it's in the last mile or in sorting centres or whatever?
Well, maybe let's look a bit in the history books first. We were the first logistics company back in, I think it was 2008, that announced a target for carbon reduction, anyways, at that time, a relative target and a reduction by minus 30%, but everybody thought we had gone lunatics. But we had delivered against the target actually a lot earlier than we had expected, which of course gave us a lot more courage. And then we came up with this crazy target of being carbon neutral by 2050, which also, many companies by now do. Some even aspire 2030. But, for a logistics company but for a company that's heavy in aviation, this is a really huge and tough topic. But I think we're making really, really great progress against it. We're now subscribing to science-based targets, to the most modern standards, and a lot is happening. And I guess there is probably three big buckets in our strategy around the sustainability. The one is, of course, but that's the smallest one, is buildings. Then another one is the whole ground fleet topic, which is already a bigger one. And then the huge animal in the room is, of course, the aviation, which accounts for by far the most of our CO2 emissions. And I think on all three, we're making great progress. On the buildings, of course, all new buildings that we're doing now are operationally carbon neutral buildings. So every new building will make sure that in the operations there is no carbon emitted. So, of course, topics like LED and other things have been with us for many years, but now going the extra step that with solar panels, we're doing the first experiments with batteries in the buildings, and of course the whole topic of electric heating with heat pumps, is a huge topic. And of course, with that topic comes another big new topic in our life, which is floor heating. Because to really heat these big logistic boxes, with a heat pump, the only chance of doing that is with floor heating, because otherwise you just don't get the efficiency of the heating system that is together with that. So, but those are already now the new standard for us, and it's now really going into mass production in the very normal every building. When we do rental contracts, where we rent buildings or space, we don't, if the building doesn't have a clear strategy on how to turn carbon neutral, the most we will sign is a contract of up to 2030, because, we're not going to, by 2030, we have the aspiration that all spaces, at least all new spaces, are fully carbon neutral. That's one big area. We're actually now in a project in Germany, in Straubing. We're taking that to the next level, and not only operationally, but we're also trying to reduce the CO2 embedded in the building and in the construction process to be heavily reduced. So we're reducing the whole concrete, which of course uses a lot of CO2 in the production, and go much more into natural materials like wood and other things, because that's another way of insetting, by really absorbing the carbon in the building. And so this will be the first project in that area where we're also on the construction part. We're not going to get the building carbon neutral from a construction perspective totally, but we'll reduce the CO2 that we emit during the construction of the project dramatically. So that's already the second level in that evolution. Then if we look at the ground fleet, of course, electricity, e-vehicles is the big topic in the game. In Germany, for example, as DHL Express Germany, I operate roughly a ground fleet of a bit more than 3,000 vans. So, and we're on a project called Road to 1,000. That means, having 1,000 fully electric vehicles on the ground, which is the limit at the moment from a technology perspective. In the express world, the routes are longer than in the standard parcel world. So an average courier of mine drives roughly around 220, 230 kilometers per day. Some of them drive up to 350 to 360 kilometers. And to be fair, at the moment, if you really wanted 365 days a year, at 160, 170 kilometers mark, that's where the limit is. Yes, officially they can do 200, 220, but on the coldest winter day, you also need to be able to do your route. And hence, 160, 170 is at the moment the limit. That's why it's a road to 1,000 and not a road to 3,000. We, of course, are very optimistic. We're seeing now basically every half year or every 9 months being 30, 40 kilometers being added to the range. And we're heavily hoping on the solid state batteries. And that, of course, should hopefully give another really huge step forward in the reach of the vehicles. And then in the line haul, of course, hydrogen will probably be the future, but that is a bit less developed yet. So at the moment, the core focus in order to get speed, and also because that's where the majority of the CO2 emissions are, the last mile is really where we are heavily embarking on it. And, the electric vehicles, very happy. The charging infrastructure and solutions for charging infrastructures is a bit more the complicated thing. And I think we need to come up with new ways, new solutions. My dream would be that, if the courier has 45 minutes to an hour lunch break, that he can do a bit of fast charging during the lunch break. In theory, already possible, but you need the fast chargers at the right location. Then you'll be able to pre-reserve them for a certain amount of time, because if exactly at that time the fast charger is busy, then, and whilst in a private environment, you say, okay, I'll wait for 20 minutes until it's free again. If you're in an express business where every minute counts, and, where the things need to be delivered by a certain time, waiting time is not an option. So things need to run smoothly. So that's where we need to, I think, develop new solutions. I think charging parks and other things will become trends. Of course, we're also charging at our stations, but if you run dual, triple waves during a day, for the first wave, it's easy. For the other waves, so there are a lot of new. So the good thing is the electric car technology is not the problem anymore. We're now getting deeper into the game and find, the real operational issues and creating solution by solution, one after the other one. And then the big animal in the game park is aviation, because that's where we are operating. We were operating way more than 200 airplanes every night flying across the world. I think we have roughly 500 airports that we're flying to every night. So we have a huge aviation operation. And that's where, of course, this is still the biggest game. We're currently following two roads, I would say. One is a bit more an experimental, exploratory road, which is the electric aviation. So as you might have heard, we have ordered 12 fully electric vehicles that will be delivered next latest before 25 in the US, that have a reach of up to 800 kilometers. And, 1 hour of flying takes half an hour of charging time. And they are experimental in state, but we feel an obligation, being the market leader in this market, to give to these innovative companies a platform where they can test their product in real life environments. And so we're really, really proud that we will be the first one that will be operating fully electric cargo airplanes. And it'll be very interesting to see how that moves then and develops. I was very excited when the plane did the first test flight in real air. And that was successful. So really, really exciting trend, but of course still a bit more innovative. I think if we're talking about our targets of really reducing our CO2 also in the air, fundamentally the topic of the day. And the technology for the moment is sustainable air fuel. So by that one, you can reduce the carbon emissions in the air by 80%. And of course, there is several technologies how you can get to this sustainable air fuel, which is basically artificially created kerosene. And the biggest source at the moment, and we jokingly we're saying, look, our planes will be flying with oil from old French fries. But like used oils from food and other things is one of the large sources of that at the moment. Then of course there is the second source, but that's one that we're not engaging in because we don't find it sustainably worthwhile doing, is having it created from palm oil or from soy oil, because if you want to do that in a large scale, you would need to plant so much of that I think we would have different problems on the globe. And the third one, and that's a technology that for the future I think will become the key player, but it's still a bit more in the infant shoes, is power to liquid. So where you can basically use hydrogen to create sustainable air fuels. The technology exists, but it's still fairly expensive and not available at large scale. So at the moment, the vast majority of the stuff we're buying comes from used oils. We're cooperating with Neste, for example, and are the biggest buyer of sustainable air fuel. And the clear commitment is that by 2030, 30% of all the kerosene we use around the world will come from sustainable air fuels, which will, of course, already have a dramatical impact on our footprint. But the good thing is, we're also offering this to our customers. So actually, we have a new product called Go Green Plus, where our customers can basically buy parts of our sustainable air fuel and get the credits for that, and by that really make sure that their shipments virtually are flying carbon neutral, but not like in the old world, but offsetting. We fly normal and we plant trees to get the carbon out of the air in the next 30, 40, 50 years again. But now by insetting, so actually we're putting less CO2 in the air from the first moment onwards. And that's to me, it's a very exciting project and a good way of really, co-financing this with our customers, but also giving them credits that they need, and really giving them an opportunity to have a story where they say, by doing our business, we've really reduced the direct impact and not only the long-term impact on the climate. And if you're following the newest standards of science-based targets, insetting is the only way that will be accepted if you want to become carbon neutral. And the problem is, to be fair, at the moment, this sustainable air fuel is still very expensive, very, very expensive. But I think that this cost will also come down as the production goes up and things go more normal. And consumer interest is big in it. Of course, at the moment, the product is still small, but a lot of interest in the product, and if I think about what are the hot topics in in our industry and what are key topics for being successful as a logistics company, e-commerce is one. We've touched that one. Sustainability, no doubt, is one. But I think the topic of people, of engagement, of culture is also one. And I'm sure you've heard about our focus strategy, which basically goes, if you have engaged employees, you will have a great service quality. If you have a great service quality, you have loyal customers. If you have a loyal customers, you have a profitable network. Telling you, it all starts with engaged employees, because we believe, as a services company, it's not machines, it's not infrastructure, it's the people that create this company every day. And so we're extremely proud, of course, that we are also by Great Place to Work certified, and we're acknowledged as the best employer in the world. So we're number one on the worldwide ranking of great place to work. But even in Germany, which was always considered a market where these topics and engagement topics are especially complicated, we're the first entity as Express within our group that has been certified as a great place to work and also recognized as one of the best employers of Germany. And why am I saying that? Because I think this is so crucial for our customers, because, motivated people produce great service quality. And also in the times where staff is really a scarce resource, that is a key differentiator and makes a difference whether the people are fully behind the product or not.
Well, staff retention certainly is an ongoing issue for many delivery companies around the world, something for us to keep an eye on. Markus, you've certainly given us plenty to think about there, everything from e-commerce, B2B, B2C e-commerce through to sustainable aircraft fuel, a topic that I never thought we'd discuss in such depth on a podcast. So Markus Reckling, CEO Germany at DHL Express, thank you very much for joining us on the Postal Hub podcast today. Coming soon on the Postal Hub podcast, Omnic, the company, well, not the whole company, just one or two people from Omnic, talking about parcel lockers. Cardinal, again, not the whole company, just one person, talking about route optimization. Route optimization, but not as we know it, I hasten to add. So make sure you listen to that one. Who else is coming along soon? Johan Peters talking about green urban logistics as well. Great episodes coming up very soon on the Postal Hub podcast. Make sure you don't miss any of them. Please subscribe to the podcast in whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on now, or as many as you like. I don't mind, as long as you subscribe. That way you get every episode in your podcast app as they're released each week. Please also subscribe to the various email newsletters I offer. There's a weekly one which comes out whenever there's a new episode of the podcast. There's a daily delivery digest, which is a daily email with the headlines from around the delivery world. And there's the Decarbonising Delivery newsletter, which talks about strategies and progress in reducing emissions in the last mile. If you want to follow me on LinkedIn, please do. It's free. There you go. It's probably various other reasons apart from it being free that you should follow me on LinkedIn. But that's all I've got time for right now, because I need to tell you that if you want to contact me about anything at all, my email address is ian@thepostalhub.com. I'm Ian Kerr. Thanks for listening in, and I look forward to your company next time on the Postal Hub podcast.